What if the Sepoy Mutiny was successful? In the 16th century, the Mughal Empire was the dominant power in the Indian subcontinent, but after the death of Aurangzeb on March 3, 1707, the empire would fall apart and would be left with nothing but a small territory to rule, with other dynasties carving their own states, of which the Maratha were the strongest. In the conclusion of the French and Indian War, the British East India Company took over Bengal, which joined the war on the side of the French. By 1857, all of India was under company rule, and after policy changes that affect the locals, tensions rose. When the British covered their munitions with pig and cow fat, which angered both the Muslims and Hindus, rebellion all over India, commonly known as the Sepoy Mutiny, broke out. The British, however, managed to put it down, and India remained under British rule. This time, however, under direct British rule and not under company rule, and was transformed to British Raj with Queen Victoria as its empress. India wouldn't gain independence until 1947, when it was divided into a majority Hindu and a majority Muslim state. But what if that didn't happen? What if the Sepoy Mutiny was successful? In this timeline, the rebellion spreads all over the Indian subcontinent, and the British are not able to put down the rebellion, and after a decisive Indian victory in Calcutta, European powers like France or the Netherlands start to support the Indians in their war against the United Kingdom. During the war, Burma invaded British possessions as well, starting the Third Anglo-Burmese War, and Persia started the Second Anglo-Persian War by invading Herat. By 1860, the United Kingdom was just forced to make peace. The entirety of mainland India becomes independent under Bahadur Shah II from the former Mughal Empire. Burma regains all lands lost in the First and Second Anglo-Burmese War, and Persia regains Herat. The United Kingdom is only left with Ceylon. The Great Game wouldn't happen, as the Russians are the only great power in the area. They would invade Afghanistan to extend their border, but like the British and later the Soviets and later the Americans, this goes horribly and they have to withdraw. Meanwhile, Iran would agree to a tributary system in order to maintain their independence. Meanwhile, Siam wouldn't be a buffer between France and the United Kingdom, and thus would fall to French Indochina, followed by Burma. The Mughal Empire would slowly modernize and would become a formidable power in Asia. Meanwhile, the United Kingdom wouldn't be nearly as powerful as it was in our own timeline without the jewel of the empire. This would be seen in its colonial policies. During the Sepoy Mutiny, the US would take over the San Juan archipelago, and the UK was unable to do anything against this. In the scramble for Africa, the British aren't as successful in enforcing their own claims. Egypt would have become a French protectorate rather than a British one, and thus France not only controls Egypt, but also Sudan. Meanwhile, Germany owns Uganda and Kenya and Italy Somaliland. Without the UK being possibly able to extend from Cape to Cairo, they may not demand Rhodesia from Portugal, meaning in the end they just got South Africa, Botswana, Nigeria, Ghana, Sierra Leone, and Gambia. Lake Victoria would be called Lake Wilhelm in this timeline. With the United Kingdom having a weaker economy than in our own timeline, they are unable to afford an arms race against the German Empire, and by the end of it in 1912, it is in fact the Kaiserliche Marine and not the Royal Navy that hosts the biggest navy with the most dreadnoughts in the world, which just further steers up tensions between London and Berlin. Unfortunately for China, they are still getting exploited by the United Kingdom and other European great powers, and world history up to 1914 largely progresses like our own. In 1914, Archduke Franz Ferdinand still gets assassinated, and World War I still breaks out. The First World War starts similar to our own, but with a weaker Western Front and France rather than the UK having to carry the Middle Eastern Front. But unbeknownst to the Allies, the war is about to turn from bad to worse because of India, which at the time was ruled by Mirza Salim. India felt surrounded by the Entente as Russia extended into Central Asia and Iran, France into mainland Southeast Asia, and their former master UK still controlled Ceylon. And so when the Royal Navy moved to fight the Germans, India launched a surprise amphibious naval invasion of Ceylon, which was quickly taken. The Entente would declare war on India, and the Indians fight the French to the east and Russians to the west. But for Russia, Afghanistan rose up, starting the Third Russo-Afghan War, and Iran also switched sides and invaded the Caucasus and Central Asia. Russia would still be plagued by revolution, maybe even earlier, and would have to make peace. Germany establishes the Kingdom of Poland, Kingdom of Lithuania, Grand Duchy of Livonia, Kingdom of Finland, Kingdom of Belarus, Hetmanate of Ukraine, Grand Duchy of Crimea, and Kingdom of Georgia. Armenia and Azerbaijan meanwhile were unclear, as both the Ottomans and Persians want the region, which could spark a war. In Central Asia, the Turkic people managed to carve out their own state, with both Afghanistan and Iran extending their northern border. The rest of Russia is in a state of civil war, and the Central Powers now focus on the Allies, and though the United States did join the war, it takes time until they arrive. India launched a massive offensive in which they kicked the French out of Indochina and besieged the British in Singapore. Meanwhile, in the Middle East, Ottoman, Persian, Afghan and Central Asian forces pushed the French to the Suez Canal and the British out of Kuwait. By the Arabs now alone, both the Hashemite and Saudis collapse. In the Balkans, the British and French can't send extra forces to Greece and even have to call back some, and thus Bulgaria manages to beat back Greece, who then ask for an armistice. Things look also bleak for Italy, as the Battle of Vittorio Veneto ends in disaster and the Austrians manage to push the Italians out of the Po Valley and open up a second front in France. The German Spring Offensive contains forces from all members of the Central Powers, and meanwhile the Anglo-French forces are just weaker, and they manage to encircle Paris. France then surrenders. Spain joined the Central Powers, and together they take down Portugal, after which the war freezes down, and a peace agreement is signed. In the Treaty of Versailles, Germany extends its western border to the Meuse and Moselle River, and Belgium becomes a protectorate, but gets Calais and Spain gets Ruslan. In Africa, Germany takes Dahomey, Upper Volta, Gabon, Congo, Ubangi, Shari, Djibouti, and Madagascar. The Ottomans re-establish the Khedivate of Egypt in Egypt and Sudan, and takes Tunisia, and Spain takes Morocco. French Indochina was broken up into the Konbong Empire, Rattanakosin Kingdom, and Dai Viet. Germany takes New Caledonia, and India takes the port of Quang Chuan. India would puppet Malaya as well, and Germany takes Papua. The Boer Republic was re-established. The Ottomans annexed Kuwait, Qatar, and Bahrain, and established the Sultanate of Muscat in southern Yemen, Oman, and the Trucial States. Italy would lose Tripolitania and Cyrenaica to the Ottomans, which were united with Tunisia into the Emirate of Tripolitania. The Dervish get Somalia, and Ethiopia gets Eritrea. Austria-Hungary would puppet Lombardy, Venetia. The United States and Japan didn't make any territorial concessions. Austria-Hungary annexes Montenegro and puppets Serbia, Romania, and Albania. Bulgaria annexes Moravia, Serbia, Dobruja, and Macedonia, while the Ottomans annexed the Greek Aegean islands, including Crete. Portugal and Guinea was annexed by Spain, with Germany taking Angola, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Malawi, Mozambique, and East Timor, and India taking Goa and Macau. Soon after the war ends, the Ottoman-Persian War over Armenia and Azerbaijan broke out, and the Ottomans won decisively, as then not only annexed Armenia and puppeted Azerbaijan, but also annexed Khuzestan, Lorestan, and Kurdistan, and gave Azerbaijan Iranian Azerbaijan. Afghanistan also joined the war and annexed Herat. After the war, Reza Pahlavi would overthrow the Qajar dynasty with Indian help, and Iran becomes effectively an Indian client state. The Central Powers would also fall apart, with India, the Ottoman Empire, Turkestan, Afghanistan, and Somalia forming the Greater Afro-Eurasian Co-Prosperity Sphere with Japan. In Russia, the Whites won the civil war, and Alexander Kolchak steps down in favor of a republic, and the first elected president is Alexander Kerensky. But in this timeline, Japan doesn't withdraw from the Far East, and rather forms the Far Eastern State under Konstantin Radzievsky. Soon after the war, the Ogaden War broke out between the Sultanate of Somalia and Ethiopian Empire, with Somalia winning and taking over the Ogaden thanks to support from the Ottoman Empire. The Austro-Hungarian Empire would be, after a brief civil war, get transformed into the Danubian Federation. Meanwhile, Germany dominates the European continent and forms Middle Europa, which is an economic bloc most of Europe joined. Germany also formed Middle Africa out of its African possessions. In France, fearing a communist takeover, Charles Maurras and his far-right Action Française were given power to crush the socialists, but he used the power to establish a fascist dictatorship with him as prime minister and Philip VIII as king. In Italy, Benito Mussolini would still march to Rome and establish a fascist dictatorship as well, and in Russia and UK the fascists under Ivan Ilyin and Leopold Canning would win the election, and Leopold Canning would become prime minister for life while Ivan Ilyin is regent until the monarchy is re-established, but he doesn't really plan to actually restore the monarchy, or to step down. In Spain, Alfonso XIII remains in power thanks to German help, as they want a friendly Spain to encircle the French. In 1937, Japan invades China, and the co-prosperity sphere would see success as China falls quickly as they were surrounded on all sides. In September of 1939, Russia would launch an invasion into Belarus, which would start the Second World War, and soon later the co-prosperity sphere would go to war with both sides by invading Russia and France through Siberia and North Africa, and Bulgaria and Germany through the Balkans and East Africa. Germany decided to go to the offensive, and was quick in making progress in France, until they were halted at the Seine River. Meanwhile, Russia was stopped at the Daugava and Dnipro River. Germany abandoned Finland as they expected them to fall, only to be shocked when the Russians were actually beaten back, after which Germany sends reinforcements to Finland. In Siberia, Mongolia under the regency of Roman von Ungern-Sternberg fell quickly, and the Russians withdraw to the Yenisei River. In 1940, Danubia crushes the Italians, and they switch sides and open up a new front in France, which causes them to fall as well. The British were forced to withdraw to Sicily, but given that the Central Powers control Gibraltar and the co-prosperity, the Suez Canal, they are trapped and soon later surrender. After a naval invasion, the UK has to surrender, after which the Germans focus on Russia. Being all alone, Russia would fall by 1941, and the Central Powers and co-prosperity sphere meet at the Ural and Caucasus Mountains. In Africa, the front froze at the Sahara and the East African mountains, and a truce is signed. Russia would be split into smaller states. The Far Eastern state is extended to the entire Far East, and Siberia becomes the Regency of Siberia under Gregory Semyonov. Germany puppets the Russian Tsardom under Vladimir III and the Don Kingdom, while Finland takes Karelia and Kola. France has to make even MLR territorial concessions to Germany, and Belgium as becomes a puppet under a personal union with Spain in exchange for Spanish Guinea. Germany takes Senegal, Guinea and Ivory Coast. The Kingdom of Morocco, Sahel Federation and Republic of Algeria join the co-prosperity sphere. Ethiopia is split into Oromia, Amhara and Eritrea, all of which are Somali puppet states. Somalia also gets Somali lands in Kenya. The United Kingdom is split into the Kingdom of England, Kingdom of Scotland, and Grand Duchy of Wales, with Germany taking the Isle of Man as a naval base. The Netherlands take British and French Caribbean holdings, and the Boer Republic takes South Africa and Botswana. The Crown just controls Canada and Australasia, but Quebec was given independence, and New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, Prince Edward Islands and Newfoundland were given to the US, and would become two new states. The Ottomans would take Cyprus and Germany Malta. Italy is split into the Kingdom of Sardinia, which got Nice, Savoy and Corsica, Grand Duchy of Modena and Reggio, and Kingdom of Two Sicilies, which are all Danubian vassal states, and the Vatican was given all former papal lands back. Georgia would become an Ottoman vassal, and Indonesia gains independence. The Ottoman-Bulgarian border remains like it was before the war. Soon after the war, Japan bombs Pearl Harbor and goes to war with the US. They manage to take the Philippines, Wake, Guam and then Hawaii, and negotiate a peace. A Cold War between Middle Europa, the co-prosperity sphere, and New World Association would emerge. Germany and later Japan, the USA, India, Danubia, Canada, the Ottoman Empire, the Boer Republic, and Australasia would develop nuclear weapons. In this timeline, a faction led by Japan, the Ottomans, but also India, would dominate the entirety of Asia and Northern Africa, and would be in a 1984-style Cold War with Oceania and Europe. The United Kingdom wouldn't be nearly as powerful as it got in our own timeline. If you liked the episode, leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe. Goodbye.